Okay, there we go. We live. So, good evening, everybody. I wanted to share just some of my thinking with you. It's taken me a long time. This actually should be a post on work-life balance in corporate, but I've just gotten to a point where I just feel that this would be a good time for me to share what I've been thinking. And as I always joke, when I'm with some friends, we get together and they allow me the space to articulate my thinking. I always start off, they say, oh, here we go. And I always start with saying, I've been thinking. So what I would like to share, so let me start by saying, people understand this, I'm non-medically trained. I don't have a background in any sort of medical training, but these are my thoughts. So this comes with the SNLV rating, and these are just my thoughts. So please feel free just to use or take or question or discard any of my thinking, because these are just my thoughts that I've put together over having been blessed to be in there's such a wonderful position as a wellness coach, to have an inordinate amount of time to be able to do the research to back the training that I do with people. And there's so much amazing research out there in the health and wellness world and the way things are changing. So what I'd like to do is just share what has fascinated me from the beginning. So I have been over the years certified as a life coach in 2010, and always been in the health and wellness industry. So really sort of being very, very physical, now moving towards where there's a bit more of a mind-body balance. And then what started to happen was that as I really started to become interested, and I don't quite know when it began, but interested in sort of the language, the language of how everything works out for us. And having been very fortunate to have attended a hypnosis facilitation course through the South African Institute of Hypnosis, which has been for me over the last 2.5 years one of the most astounding fast tracks to understanding my own patterning, my own below conscious issues, and still working with them. In no ways, there's certainly been progress, but in no way am I perfect. And I don't think it's never about perfection, because I think we'll grow. We keep growing and keep changing. There's never an end. The minute we say I'm there, I've got it sorted out, I have it. For me personally, I believe that's not when we have it. That's just the beginning. And what I've come to see, which has been the most phenomenal realization for me, is that I've taken lots of information from everywhere. I've actually born Roman Catholic, so I had a religious sort of religious upbringing. So I was exposed to Christianity, and then and that languaging, that very sort of rich languaging, and then through my research and my own spiritual path, and this is the thing, we can't not. I'm more than just a work-life balance. There's so many aspects to myself. There's my spiritual path that I've walked until this moment that's actually brought me to this path. And it's astounding that if I hadn't have used, I now know that I used my spirituality to bypass and use it to numb, because at least it gave me some form of identity to which I could cling whilst I was working through some of my below conscious patterning and whatnot. And what was so amazing about that, my spiritual path, is that of course I spent reading and understanding, and I was blessed to do a yoga teacher's training through Natalie Boerter, which is like the most phenomenal thing for me, and that gave me such a beautiful foundation for the feeling behind how to bring yourself into a state of flow. And let me not start about flow and Stephen Kotler and Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's work, and it's an absolute passion of mine. And I was thinking about and forgive me because I'm all over the place, and that's just part of the thing, is that with Stephen Kotler's work, he talks about we go into states of flow, it's a skill that we can learn, and then what happens is that we access the state of selflessness, timelessness, effortlessness, and richness, and they call them the non-ordinary states of consciousness. But in my understanding and everything that's been going on and getting to like really sort of figure out is that these are our normal states of consciousness. Selflessness, timelessness, effortlessness, and richness are our normal states of consciousness, and everything else, frustration, anger, pain, depression, and anxiety, those are the non-normal states of consciousness. And we're moving away from those and towards more of the wholeness of who we are. And in Caroline Leaf's work, Dr. Caroline Leaf, and I discovered her work at the beginning of this year, absolutely, there's one particular phrase, and this page 39 in her book, Think, Learn, and Succeed. And I'm not quoting 100%, because I can't remember it out of my head verbatim, but what she says is that in working with some quantum physicists and understanding what the mind is, and that the mind is the mind and the brain is the brain, it says, quote, more or less, unquote, that it can no longer be ignored that up to 90 to 99% of who we are light packets of energy, which is the mind. Let me say that again, because that for me just blew my mind wide open. It can no longer be ignored that up to 90 to 99% of who we are light packets of energy. And that for me was just the most astounding thing. And I think it was Lewis Howes in his interview with Dr. Leaf, where he asked, so where is the end? Where does this, if that electromagnetic aspect of who we are, which is mind, is part of the quantum field, where do we end? And she went on to say that there's no saying where we actually end, because that electromagnetism is part of the quantum field, and the quantum field, and in no way am I a quantum physicist or a quantum theorist or quantum anything. I've just taken this research, and that's why I'm saying use it, take it, understand it, don't use it, discard it. But this for me has been absolutely mind-blowing, and then it takes me back to all the spiritual traditions and all the religious traditions have always, there's a higher self, a universal self, a cosmic self. There's a general understanding that there is something much bigger than who we are. So the we, as I'm talking to you now through this physicality of how I represent and navigate myself through this world as Warren. So I'm speaking to you right now through expressing through, but in my deepest meditations, what I've come to understand with this knowledge, and it's Bruce Lipton and Greg Braden and Dr. Joe Dispenza and just so many people, Deepak, over the years, just pouring this, Anthony, whoever it was, just this sort of insatiable desire to learn and learn, because always thinking they're driven that there has to be more, because I was escaping this past that I just didn't want to be part of. And having gotten to this point, absolutely come to understand that it's not so much that we need to go within. It's that and this is the thing, be kind to your bodies, because know this, our bodies are the gateway. As Stephen Kotler says, is that free your ass and your mind will follow. Whereas the traditional thinking is free your mind and your ass will follow. It's actually, so for us in the Western world, the way we can really do it to begin to access that, and this is why, bring no harm to your body. In terms of your language, in terms of how you're treating your body, how you're looking after your body, is because I've personally have really come to understand that our bodies are the gateway. And it's not that we go within. It's not that we go within to beget more life, because we are the life of lives already. Is that we go within and we do all the externals like nutrition, sleeping, breath work, restoration, and exercise, all of these things, so that we turn the chemical keys within our bodies flow, not that we go within, but to allow more of who we are as these quantum light packets of energy to come flowing out. So it's not the begetting of more life, it's actually turning the chemical keys so that more of who we are flows out into this dimension. And that's the most incredible thing about this, is that life, if take that electromagnetism as life itself, that which animates, the vital energy that animates our physicality, that permeates all of matter, and If that's what we are, then that means it's unfathomable. Deepak Chopra, in his book Creating Affluence, has 25 traits that some physicists, on the question of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, the chap who invented transcendental meditation, asked some physicists to create the physical traits of the field, and he lists 25, and they're absolutely beautiful in the way Deepak Chopra has written about them. And years ago, I remember saying, if you're going to model, why not model the traits of the unified field? And that for me has always stayed with me. And suddenly, all these disparate ideas have come together. Steve Jobs, in his Stanford address, says, "Connect the dots." So all of a sudden, from years ago, from 20 years ago, the dots are suddenly being connected, and then also, yes, I can. The 25 traits, of course I can model that. And life is unfathomable, and life is mysterious, and life is eternal, and life will find a way. And suddenly, of course, now we're moving towards vision. If we can work on the assumption that we are already all that we need to be, that we are 10 to the power of 27, 400 billion bits of information potential, if that's who we are, and this is 9 to 10% of how we've perceived our reality, and it's in our thinking, and to create the language that is rich and beautiful, and just so we're able to speak favor into our lives, and speak joy, and speak passion, and to speak all these things, and imagine the chemical signature that we can begin to start setting up with that. Whereas if we're locked into hypervigilance and we're stuck in fight and flight, and we're just seeing solutions because we've never been trained to think that there's a different way, that there's just a different awareness, that we have a capacity, we have a in this deep now that Kotler talks about, this generous moment, that we actually have the capacity to access this. And this is what all of the traditions have ever been about, is to regulate the body into alignment, where we feel that our chemical signature, heart-brain coherence, that our vagal tone, all these other things are bringing us back, because then we can begin to understand and feel and access more of who we are. And here's the kicker, is that we haven't even begun to imagine. And that's why I say, bring no harm to your bodies, because your best life is yet to be lived. Your best relationships, your best ideas. And that's why, if you have ideas, use them and share them and give them, because to keep moving in this way and to understand how much capacity we've actually got, it's absolutely just astounding. I don't believe that there's an end to the amount of what we could create. And suddenly what that means is that this is actually beyond, and I say this with the utmost respect. The sense that I get is that this is beyond spirituality and religion, but at the same time, we can embrace our spirituality and our religion so fully, because then we're operating from a space of fullness. Because how much more full and whole could we be if we're 400 billion bits of information, quantum light packets of energy, that we haven't even begun to understand the depth and the enormity of who and what our potential and what our capacity actually is. Sure. So it's just, for me, these ideas and putting it all together, and just being able to have all this information and put it in just such a wonderful way. If you're struggling, if you're having a hard time, if you're not sort of finding a way, all I can say to you is that when you're doing your breath work, do your breath work, and know that you're doing breath work to access who you already are. It's not the path. If you've embarked upon a path, here's the thing about so certainly my spiritual practice became so convoluted that the more convoluted it became, the further it removed me away from this assumption now that I am already a whole being. And it's mind-boggling. I haven't even begun to unravel what that actually means for me, because the languaging, and usually it would be a mystical experience or religious ecstasis or something like that. So there would be language associated with that. Here in this space, we can, it's so vast that it's almost beyond language, and in the anticipation, the enormity of the realization that there's no end to our capacity to think is mind-boggling. And at the same time, so absolutely freeing and so absolutely beautiful that when I wake up in the morning, and of course there's days that I do and I don't, I have a tough time, and I'm still not figuring out this human thing, so there's no escaping the humanness. It's just now that in terms of learning how to let it flow, and at least then I know that this too shall pass. And those things, like life is unfathomable, life is mysterious, life is eternal, because it really is. And you know, just to have that as an awareness, it's just been mind-blowing for me. So if you're struggling, know that from my perspective, and this is true, I can say it for myself, there's definitely a way. There's a way. So do your breath work, do your exercise, regulate, align your thinking and your language patterning. If you find yourself saying negative things or watching, you know, sitting and scrolling, become more mindful. Create the compound effect of small habits repeated over a period of time. Thank you, Darren Hardy. Has been one of those things where I didn't understand the power of that, but it's in the everyday thing. And clean your room, wash your car, get the small things done. Start creating and identifying patterns, because just in the same way that the compound effect of negative patterns that may have brought you to a point where you're feeling stuck and you're feeling anxious and you're feeling lethargic and you're feeling that you're procrastinating, you're not being able to be creative as you want to be. Know that by the same habits that have brought you to this way, you can actually begin to grow and allow your language to become rich. Find ways to enrich your language, that when you speak, it's not just how's your day, oh nice. Just start thinking of ways to actually create language that sets up a chemical signature in your body and there's just so much to share. And I just thought that tonight would be just a wonderful way to do that. That, as I said, you know, I've been thinking and I've been putting some ideas together, and this is making so much sense for me. And if that's the case, and we have access to so much energy, and another thing, if we can then embrace spirituality and religion, we can begin to embrace each other, because then we can celebrate the differences. Because from that point of view, if I am the source of my abundance, if I am that energy, if I am truly that which animates my body and permeates all of matter, then why would I need to take that from you? And each person and begins to grow from such an internal to external growth. And Spence is absolutely right that we can then begin to grow from a place of joy. We can make change, transformational change, from a place of joy, from a place of happiness, because we wish to experience change, and that we're not forced into change through some kind of trauma or some kind of mishap or some kind of disease, because our thinking slowly but surely brought us to that plane. And I haven't fathomed it all out. So I haven't worked it all out. I certainly haven't had an understanding of this. And this is truly the beginning. And the more I think about it, the more I talk about it, the more exciting it actually becomes. And there just seems to be no end. So thank you so much for listening. And I'm actually going to keep on keeping on, because this felt really good. Thank you. Good night.